Well, good afternoon. You know, I happen to believe local government is the most important level of government in the United States. You actually have to do something. When I was chairman of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, one of the largest local governments in America, my daughter was in the 5th grade, and I was invited to speak to her 5th grade about the relationship among local, state, and federal levels of government. And I accepted, and I gave a stem winder of a speech, if I do say so, to that 5th grade. I talked about the delicate balance between taxation and the provision of services. I talked about the cultural differences between Northern Virginia and the rest of Virginia. I talked about the intergovernmental relations among state, federal, and local government, and I wound up with great panache, and I got very polite applause from that 5th grade. With one exception. There's one little girl with her arms akimbo and a scowl on her face. And I went up to her and I said, "You didn't like my talk?" She said, "No, I thought it was boring." My daughter could see the stricken look on my face, and she came running up and said, "Oh, Dad, don't listen to her. She just repeats what everyone else says." So it might be the most important level of government, but it's not the most respected, certainly in the 5th grade. I want to thank you for being here and for such wonderful presence and attendance to ensure that we have a rigorous and vibrant debate about the Middle East, about Israel, about the United States' relationship with Israel, and about Israel's future. And I come to you today with mixed feelings, and I'm sure you share them. We have a very aging Palestinian leadership that seems moribund and incapable of rising above corruption and incapable about delivering the services local government here in the United States does deliver, has to. And as a result, the peace process on the Palestinian side has been frozen. And on the Israeli side, we have a return to office of former Prime Minister, soon to be new Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu. Now, I am a lifetime supporter of Israel. I have spent 40 years in Middle East peace, policy. Starting when I was a young man, I was hired by a young senator named Joseph R. Biden Jr., who was on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and he hired me, and I worked on that committee on the Middle East. I was the only goy. For 10 years, traveled the region, looked at the challenges we faced. I wrote the foreign aid bill as a staffer that transferred aid to Israel from loans to grant and shot it up to make sure that Israel was strong. I met every prime minister of Israel, starting with Yitzhak Shamir, until the present. And I was always struck that Bibi Netanyahu was a bit different in terms of Israeli politicians. Contrast, I spent a lot of time my last visit to Israel with the late Shimon Peres, a mensch. He knew the region, he knew the players. He could put things in context. He was a raconteur, but also a very knowledgeable human being, which was a huge asset when we were talking about what next steps were with various other leaders in the region. He brought wisdom and gravitas and a perspective, and a sense of political correctness, in a good sense, in terms of how far to push and when to push and who to push. In Bibi Netanyahu's last term in office, he came and spoke to a joint session of Congress deliberately snubbing the head of government of the United States, Barack Obama. He only coordinated with the Republican leadership in the Congress, promised that the subject he was talking about was so important it transcended partisan politics here and in Israel. And he proceeded to trash the Obama policy with respect to the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear agreement. Now, I supported that agreement. Thank you for that, but you know not everyone did. Certainly Bibi Netanyahu didn't. For a foreign leader to come to the United States and address the United States Congress and trash one of the key pieces of U.S. policy and in the Middle East to attempt to deter Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. And Bibi said, actually, this agreement will accelerate that. So what was the record? When the agreement went into force, Iran kept every metric in the agreement. It kept the agreement on centrifuges, reducing them. It kept the agreement on enriched uranium, reducing it, and exporting extra uranium out of the country. It closed its plutonium production reactor and cemented it over. It allowed inspections, including random inspections by the IAEA. Other than that, yes, Iran cheated and violated the agreement. And what happened? We pushed the nuclear threshold back by months. And if we'd kept it in force in the next administration, we could have perhaps pushed it back years. And where are we today following Bibi Netanyahu and Donald Trump's advice on Iran nuclear? They are days away. Days. And the only solution, it seems to me, that Bibi Netanyahu really likes is what they euphemistically call a kinetic solution. Military strike. And the only country that has the capacity now to, in fact, do that efficaciously is the United States. And the consequences of a military strike against Iran and its nuclear facilities could be catastrophic. That's what Bibi Netanyahu's rejection of the JCPOA and his good friend Donald Trump's pulling out of that agreement, a U.S. negotiated agreement that included Russia and China and the EU, Iran, and us. Now Netanyahu's coming back, and he's put together the most extreme right-wing government in the history of Israel, including people who were not long ago designated as terrorist supporting, not only by our government and Europe, but by Israel itself. The hopes for a two-state solution, the hopes for some kind of sane, humane policy on the West Bank are fading. Holding this new government to account by us is going to be critical. Bibi, knowing that when he comes here, he better not try to divide us on partisan lines again. He better not risk Israel's long-term support in the United States by making it a partisan issue. And he better listen to voices, including the voices in this room, who are growing in number. Like all of you, I want to see a secure, stable, free, democratic Jewish state. And I also want to see a stable, democratic, free Palestinian state. So we've got our work cut out. But there are some good things that have happened. Donald Trump has retired to Mar-a-Lago. He's running again, but it's not working out so well. Let's keep him in retirement. What do you think? Joe Biden is in the White House. Long time supporter of Israel. But he understands that the policies that preceded him in the previous 4 years took pieces off the chessboard in terms of the peace process. Pieces that should have been part of the negotiation, part of the leverage to try to reach a two-state solution that's meaningful and that works and provides stability. And hope for the people on both sides of that border. He gets that. We also have the Abrahamic Accords, where Israel and many of its previously hostile Arab neighbors have worked out a modus operandi that could provide enormous stability and be a source of support for a peace process. And of course, the most recent agreement with Lebanon on exploiting energy resources in the Mediterranean also has enormous prospects of future collaboration in a region that up until recently didn't have it or any prospect of it. So we're at a crossroads, and the American voice is going to be really important in this crossroads, in informing our friends in Israel, in informing our friends here, and in providing other voices, voices of support for Israel, voices of support for Palestine, but voices that want to see peace, that want to put an end to violence, that want to put an end to instability, so that proud peoples in Israel and in the Palestinian state to be can have a future that isn't marred by episodic violence, isn't marked by human rights violations, isn't marked by occupation, but that has the beauties and responsibilities of democratic states. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your voice and your activism. Thank you for having my back and my colleagues' back who want to see this process go forward. God bless you all, and I hope I wasn't as boring as I was in that 5th grade. Thank you.